Love it or hate it, Britain has a Labour government firmly in charge. The Conservative Party is now perceived by many to no longer be an authentic alternative to the Labour government. And as a result, we've seen a huge surge in support for Reform UK. But there are those who are saying that this support for reform has been exaggerated by both social media and the more right-leaning news channels. There's also many who feel that Reform are no longer providing the same genuine alternative as they seemed to back in the 2024 general elections, and that Reform are gradually sliding into the same messaging that both Labour and Conservative are dishing out. In today's show, we'll be exploring which party can provide a real alternative to Labour, and whether indeed the British people want these smaller and less experienced parties to even be in the political arena. Maybe too much choice and the rise in populism is causing more division between us, or maybe we need to go through this. Maybe it's a process worth going through in order to finally break the uniparty's lock and make Britain Great Britain once again. I'm Kezia Noble and welcome to UK Now. Joining us today is journalist and commentator Jonathan Liss, Reform UK donor Gary Mond, and independent journalist Eddie Alexander. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to start with you, Jonathan. So there was a recent YouGov poll, and it came back that only 25% of the British public thought that Keir Starmer was doing a good job in his first year. That's pretty low.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, let's have a look at some of the things that he's achieved. First of all, he's raised taxes, which are causing huge problems for businesses. The economy is still in a mess. Inflation is rising. And what's also rising is the numbers of both legal and illegal immigrants coming into this country, which is a huge concern for a lot of people. He's hell-bent on taxing family-run farms into extinction. And he's seriously damaged our nation's security with surrendering the Chagos Islands. The only thing that most of the country backed him on was the reform of the welfare. And guess what? He's done a U-turn on that. So how can anyone look at this government and say it's fit for purpose?
Well, you've given me a long list of...
There's a longer list. I just didn't write it all down.
Well, look, we could go through the individual things that you've mentioned. And look, I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I'm not a spokesman for the government. And I agree with you. They've got a lot of things wrong. The first thing they got wrong was the cutting of the winter fuel payments, which wasn't discussed anywhere in the election manifesto and caused a lot of ill will among the people most likely to vote for almost no benefit at all, because it was only ever going to raise just over £1 billion, which wouldn't even touch the sides. The real problem,
you actually added something to my list.
The real problem was, it was a problem that was shared by all the main parties, actually, which was that no one was honest with the people during the election campaign. No one was honest about certainly Labour was honest about the scale of damage that the Conservatives had done in 14 years of misrule, where public service has been run into the ground. I think probably everyone could agree on that. But the problem was that they weren't prepared to level with people about the remedy for that, which was a lot of public spending, and that would also require some taxes to go up. And they sort of just continued this sort of charade that we could do all of that with just reform of institutions and raising VAT on private schools, which is actually something I have to talk about a lot of times with right-wing people. But actually, but that's one thing which you might not agree with. That actually, people are generally in support of. So that's probably why I didn't mention it. But so. That was the first thing. So it was a mistake. It was a mistake to box themselves in by saying that they weren't going to increase income tax or national insurance or VAT. That was obviously a mistake, because clearly those taxes bring a lot of revenue and they could have tinkered around with them. So they left themselves boxed into a corner, and so they had to find new ways to raise revenue. So that was really the first big mistake. It was the key mistake, which has taken us to this point, because public finances have been left in a really, really bad state. We expect to have sort of Scandinavian-style public services with American-style taxes. That eventually is a magic piece of magic, which can only take you so far. You have to be able to raise revenue.
There's two ways to easily fix this, which would be, first of all, reform the welfare state, which is what they did the U-turn
Well, by ending triple lock,
and
for
maybe
example.
stop letting in
ending the triple
millions
lock.
of
Would you support
people.
that?
Excuse me?
Would you support ending the triple lock then? Because pensioners, sorry, we're talking about welfare. Pensioners are the greatest recipients of welfare in this country, and we can't talk about them because they're the people who vote. So if we want to talk about welfare, we can talk about welfare across the board. So actually, what I think is that when they ended winter fuel payment, we'll cut winter fuel payments, and then so once you've ended a tax, once you've ended a benefit, it's gone. If you reinstate it, it becomes a new benefit. So basically, what the government decided to do when they U-turned was to give a lot of pensioners who didn't need it, a lot of them do, but give a lot of people in this country £200, just £200 to spend on whatever they like. Mm-hmm. And if you're a young person who's struggling to get on the housing ladder, who is working a minimum wage job, who looks at what the situation was for people 50 years ago, right? 50 years ago when you could have a sort of an ordinary job and buy 2 up, 2 down with a family, with maybe one person in the household didn't work. And they see what their lives are like now, they resented that. So I think we do have to have a big conversation about this country and welfare.
I've mentioned this before, that our expectations have been lowered thanks to bringing in so many people into this country, especially from the third world. So, the more people we let in, the less likely our young people are going to get on the housing ladder. And it's costing us so much having all these people in. It's costing us so much. And that's what they should be cutting down, is the immigration that's coming into this country. Rather than taxing me more, rather than taxing businesses more, rather than putting VAT here and there on a private
those immigrants are also paying taxes.
They are, most of them, not a net contribution, not net contributors anymore. Most of them are not.
Well, look, you have people who are coming in to sort of staff our basic public services. If you took sort of foreign-born people out of the NHS, the NHS would collapse.
Foreign-born people, it can't carry on.
That's not true.
Would you like to respond?
Yes, I'll just start with the one point of agreement. Very early on in what Jonathan was saying, he referred to the winter fuel payments only raising £1 billion. And compared to the wider question, it is virtually irrelevant. What matters is the tremendous amounts of wasteful public expenditure, particularly on matters related to net zero. Which I
didn't even put that in my list. You keep adding to this list.
Which I certainly am very much opposed to, as are most in Reform UK and indeed across the population. We do have to look at wasteful public spending. That's one example. There are loads of others, which is why Reform UK have introduce these doges into the councils they control. How much it saves remains to be seen, but certainly we need to tackle the whole issue of public spending. And indeed with the NHS, how well is the NHS run? Is all the spending on the NHS effective? And then the other side of the equation is tax. Taxes are too high. I'm an employer. Employment national insurance contributions at 15%. I'm having to pay for my staff, and it's costing me. It means I can invest less in new projects for my business. And I know businesses all over the country are going to have this problem.
Well, you shouldn't moan too much, Gary. At least you can get a Deliveroo driver within 5 minutes. That's the main thing. Would you like to make a point, Eddie?
He's probably in a hotel located near to you. Jonathan, only 8% of immigrants actually go into work in the NHS. So the whole charade of immigrants holding up our NHS, that's actually wrong, because only 8% of the immigrants who are coming in go into work in the NHS. And I think a bigger point should be training our own people, training our own young people, getting them into frontline roles. And as for Labour's first, what's it been, 13, 14 months in office? I think it's been an unmitigated disaster, Kezia. We've seen an attack on our farmers. We've seen an attack on our elderly with the winter fuel payments, an attack on our disabled. We've seen them do more U-turns than a 21-year-old in a Tesco Bradford car park. We've seen them giving away vital British territories like the Chagos Islands, costing us billions in the process, thus resulting in our allies like the United States of America no longer trusting us, thus resulting in the British public not trusting the leader, as well as our allies not trusting us or our leader. That, in my opinion, equals an unmitigated disaster. We've seen them weaponising our judiciary system as well.
They must have done something good.
But the US agreed. The US supported the Chagos Islands deal, otherwise it wouldn't have gone ahead.
Well, so they've not been landing their planes because of because of their alliances with China. They've not supported the deal, and that's why we didn't see the US planes landing in British in British-run army bases because of their alliances to places like China.
Because the UK didn't give permission. So they didn't ask permission. You talk about the Iranian strikes.
I'm talking about the Iranian strikes.
By the way, 30 billion.
30 billion pounds to give away.
Jonathan, what have they done that's good? That's my last question on this subject. What have they done that's good, Labour? We're all waiting.
Well, if you just have a basic list, so obviously I think they've done some good jobs on nationalising the railways. I think that's a very, very positive first step to take public services back into public ownership. Great British Energy, they settled the big strikes, the industrial disputes that were costing the economy billions of pounds.
By giving them more money.
It was actually a lot cheaper to settle those disputes than to have endless industrial action. Remember the year before, we've always forgotten it now because it feels like ancient history.
Because it was a Tory
last year of the Tory
governments. They're
not interested in who's in power. They're interested in the money. They're interested in the money that was being made. So that's just not true. So that was another good thing. And also, I think it's important they have set the dial on foreign policy in terms of the EU in particular. Now, our relationship with the EU was in the doldrums, and there's been a mood change. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be re-entering the single market and customs union. I don't think that's necessarily the right step for right now. But certainly it's important to have an acknowledgement that these are our key alliances and for the government to be fostering those.
Well, I think I'll just come in here.
One very make it concise, please.
It's not settled is Birmingham Council and the rubbish bin collections. It's indeed that Angela Rayner apparently has been... she actually left the union anyway, but the union don't want to have anything to do with her.
Wasn't a dispute with the UK government, though? Speak to the council.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
But it's still...
unions have always been extremely left-leaning.
Are you saying... No, this is interesting. Are you saying that you now support the UK government intervening in disputes over which it has no authority? Because as a supporter of a right-wing small state, presumably you'd hate that. So the big governments are stepping into things it's not involved in.
I would look at different solutions, but the main point is that Birmingham residents have not had their rubbish...
Okay, fine. So take it up with Birmingham City Council. Not do that, Angela Rayner. Don't do that, Angela Rayner.
So, you've that's the best that Labour have done. Fair enough. It's not really privatising the railways. Really wasn't on my list of priorities when I went into the.
Well, they didn't privatise
polling. You said that they've nationalised them. Pardon, thank you. Over to you, Gary. So, you're a reform donor. You want to see reform as the next, party in power, but they're not the same. They're not even the same lineup as back in 2024 elections. And a lot of people are saying they've become a very watered down version of their original messaging. I think a lot of people from reform voters that I've spoken to just feel that they've lost momentum and they've lost that enthusiasm that they had when they casted their vote back in 2024.
I don't agree. The first point I would make is that lineups change over time.
And there's only 5 of them.
14% that have lost the way.
Yes, but the fact is that there are so few MPs as the nature of the voting system. There's massive support for Reform UK. It's between 30 and 33% in the polls, depending on which pollsters you believe. And the actual support for Reform UK among the British people is growing and growing, and is substantially higher than it was a year ago. They only got 14% of the general election. Now it seems to be north of 30%. So when something is going well, you have to ask yourself, why is it going well? Just as you ask yourself why something's going badly, if it is going badly. And it's going well because the message that the Reform UK is conveying on so many policy areas is chiming with the British people.
But it has been watered down. Do you admit that?
No, I don't admit it.
Nigel Farage has said we're not, it's impossible to do mass deportations. He said that.
Over time.
He said that. It's not, whispers.
To Yusuf's most recent broadcast a couple of weeks ago, that is absolutely an objective to remove all illegal immigrants. The question is whether it can be done in 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years. That's a debatable point.
He didn't say that. He just said it's not possible.
Physically impossible.
It's physically impossible.
Over the long period of time, it can be achieved. Maybe it cannot be achieved in a matter of months. I think it's been taken out of context. I think that one should look at all Reform UK's policies in the 5 or 6 key areas: freedom of speech, immigration, net zero, the economy, taxation, and others, and compare it with the policies of the other political parties.
But that wasn't my question. I just said, why are they watering down their messaging? Do you want to respond?
I don't believe it's watering down, actually. I think it's fairly consistent.
Do you think they're watering it down, Eddie?
Well, I've seen a lot of questionable statements from people like Nigel Farage, even people like Richard Tice, with Nigel Farage's most recent statement saying that you only need to have lived in Wales for 5 years to qualify for every single benefit that a native Welsh person can get. I think since Reform have done incredibly well in the local council elections, and since they did well in the local general election, we have seen a real watered down version of them, whether that's just them trying to gain some of the more middle ground vote, but we have seen a watered down version of Reform with Nigel Farage saying it's physically impossible to deport all of the illegals with that's what I go on. I go on what Nigel Farage has said, and Nigel Farage has flip-flopped around on so many issues, and this is the only problem. This is the main problem I have with Reform. We need someone to come in and completely overhaul our immigration system, our judiciary system, and all of these systems in our country. And I don't think a man like Nigel Farage, who has said that we can't deport all of the illegals, who's gone back and forth on so many issues, who have had Richard Tice coming out as well, flip-flopping on issues. I don't think people like this, so far out of the election as well, I don't think people like this who can't stick to their word now, I don't think people like this can come in and be trusted with the momentous task of overhauling all of these institutions, our immigration system, our local council systems, our judiciary system. I don't think that Reform have the capacities to come in and completely overhaul them. If already they're stopping at the first hurdle.
So you're attacking them for the right, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I do not believe that already. 14 months after after the general election, they're already backtracking, saying no, we can't deport all of the illegals.
Because who would you like to be the next Prime Minister then?
I think what we need to see now, like you referred to earlier, 14 years of failure, 14 months of failure with the first Labour government. I think it is crucial that we need to see in UK politics a solid right-leaning party to rightly hold Reform to account.
A right-leaning party. It sounds like you want a hard right party.
Yeah, that's not. If
Reform is too centrist for you, then who's the right of Reform that you would welcome?
Well, I would happily welcome Rupert Lowe. I would happily welcome people like Jenrick, and I think that is absolutely. I think that's absolutely neat. Yeah, but I listen to what people say.
Jenrick believes in Robert Jenrick.
Yes, exactly.
I listen to what people say. I take Nigel Farage at his word.
Robert Jenrick is.
I take Nigel Farage at his word. I take Nigel Farage at his word. And let me just finish up 30 seconds. I take Nigel Farage at his word. I take Richard Tice at his word. I take these senior Reform MPs at their word. And when they start telling me things that give me alarm bells about we can't deal with the immigration, about living in Wales for 5 years, I think we need to see now, 3 years prior to the election, I think we absolutely need to see people like Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe coming around the table.
Just launch a party and support that.
Yeah. To rightly hold Reform to account, because if they're already changing their tone now, less than 14 months after the general election, if they're already flip-flopping and looking weak on all of these issues now, what are they going to be like in coming up to the next general election? So I think it's crucial that we have a solid Conservative Party, which we've not had for the last 14 years, because the Conservatives governed as Liberals. I think they absolutely did. We had a million net migration with the Tories. I think that's pretty liberal to me. I think it is absolutely vital that we have a solid right-leaning party to hold Reform rightly to account.
Okay, last response on that from Gary, please.
I profoundly disagree. I think that Reform UK is a solid right-wing leaning party. What you'll have to do is to actually look at the manifesto pledges when they come out. And I think that they are the nearest you are going to get to what you want. Not everybody's going to be happy with every single policy, but overall, they will be doing things once they're in government that certainly the other political parties aren't doing. And you mentioned Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe. The problem there is it's not so much that they're trying to exaggerate the policy differences. The problem is essentially that they don't like Nigel Farage. They're jealous.
You can't blame Rupert Lowe for not liking Nigel Farage, though. He would have been jailed. He wanted him jailed.
Nigel Farage is a monomaniac, as you know perfectly well. There's another problem with Reform, actually. And set aside the policy, Nigel Farage is a one-man band and always has been. He is Look, one thing I'll give you, he is an incredibly charismatic person. He's a brilliant communicator. I've had a drink with him. I've had a drink with him. You know, he's very good company. He meets people in the room and they like him, even if they don't like his politics.
Very charismatic.
I met both him and Rupert Lowe, and I thought Rupert Lowe was more charismatic.
But the point is that Rupert Lowe doesn't have a party behind him, and Farage does. The point is that Farage, there's never been room for more than one person at the top of any tree Nigel Farage has climbed. So the UKIP was his party, and it all fell apart when he left. The Brexit Party was him as well. Reform is out him, and anyone who's got too close to Sun, like Ben Habib, challenges him, Rupert Lowe challenges him, then obviously the allegations come out immediately. You cannot go into government with a one person. There's a lot of
And the thing what we've got to look at as well, Kezia, is what happened with when Nigel Farage had all the momentum with the Brexit Party. He handed over Boris Johnson the 80-seat majority, which also equally led to us having the Labour government now. Nigel Farage could have easily, he could have easily
my
stand
job's
in.
done now, and he left.
Exactly. He washed his hand with it. So let me just finish off 20 seconds. We might not even see Nigel Farage as the leader of reform come the next general election. He had it on the plate once and he bottled it once. So 3 years is a long way to go. And Nigel Farage might well end up in America.
Farage is a little bit like Jeremy Corbyn in the sense that both of them are much more comfortable shouting from the sidelines than actually running stuff. I think that, Fraser Nelson, who's no left winger, recently interviewed Farage and says he doesn't think Farage wants to be Prime Minister. And I sort of can agree with that. Farage likes the idea of power. I'm not sure how much he would like real power itself.
Okay, no, I'm going to have to stop it there. I have a question now for Eddie. Eddie, a lot of people will just say to people like you, just pipe down. Just pipe down. Let reform get into government and then hold them accountable. But, maybe Nigel Farage, he has to play the game. He has to say some of the right things. Let him get in, because right now what you're doing, a lot of people will say, is causing division between the more right-leaning
splitting the right, basically.
Yes, exactly. And that's what's happening. The little mini party, you've got Heritage Party, you've got Homeland Party. Imagine if everyone could just unite behind reform. We'd finally get rid of the Uni Party. We'd finally get rid of them. But people like you are, causing division, even though it's coming from a good place.
I hear it a lot. I understand your question, but you've just said about me splitting the right. I see it as more holding reform to account by me going on what they say. If I would be aligning with everything that Nigel Farage is saying, not even aligning with everything that he's saying, if I actually understood some of the stuff that he was saying, then I'd be absolutely behind reform.
Wait till they get in.
Well, we can't just play the game. We've had this for Tories for the 14 years. It is absolutely better than... We need to smash this uni party system. I'm absolutely with you on that. But it is this reason, us not holding elected officials to account, it is for this exact reason why we've had 14 years of chaos and now we've got a Labour government, because we've just gone with the one person who's been saying the right things, who looks good on paper, but has a different mindset in real life. And what you said was very interesting about them just playing the game. Just playing the game now, get the moderates on side just to get in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want someone with that type of mindset, with that type of integrity, who's willing to say one thing, who's willing to put on a public persona.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal. But it's better than what we've got.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've got to play the game of politics.
So would you want to see Nigel Farage saying, okay, we're going to come over to the middle, we're going to get the middle ground vote, we're going to get the Muslim vote because it's a big block vote. Would you like to see him saying that just so he could get in power?
What's wrong with wanting the Muslim vote?
No, there's nothing wrong with wanting the Muslim bloc.
The Muslim vote is Palestine first. That's the reason why a lot of people are worried.
And also, you've got to look at some of these councillors as well. They want airports in Pakistan, in rural villages in Pakistan, so there's easier. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the Muslim vote. Actually, it's quite the contrary. It's a very, very good vote to get. But what I'm saying is, I don't want someone like Nigel Farage coming in saying one thing, being disingenuous, already lying to get in by portraying one public persona to get in and then having another one. Whether it's
fighting amongst each other, unified like the left
as well, to be honest.
But not to this point.
Would you say that I can't deport? It is physically impossible to deport all the illegals. Does that sound like a very right thing to do? One in, one out system. Does that sound like a very right-leaning thing to do?
I would want
we absolutely
1 million out and one in.
Exactly.
Okay, but But there's a lot of people that don't want that. They want something a little bit more middle, okay?
See, I don't think they do, because for 14 years, every single election we've voted time and time again for a reduction in the numbers. It's not happened.
How do you like
We've
that?
not got time for this watered-down conservatism.
Of course, Eddie's right about the previous 14 years. There's no question about it. The Unit Party have destroyed this country, in my view, and particularly on the issue of immigration. I think we will see consistency in the deporting of illegals. We're certainly going to see stopping the boats.
But he said he's not going to do that.
He's going to stop the boats.
How do you stop the boats? How do you stop the boats
without
How do you stop the boats without
He's made it
cooperating
clear.
with the
He
French?
said it's not going to happen.
How do you stop the boats without cooperating with the French?
The question is, we actually have to use the Royal Navy, frankly. And if it means there's going to be some friction with the French, then that's an acceptable price to pay.
What do you mean,
afraid.
going into French territorial waters? An invasion?
The French have to be made to understand that they cannot send illegal immigrants to this country. It needs to be stopped completely. It can be done.
I can't see Nigel Farage having the backbone to actually stand up to the French if he's already looking spineless in his interviews. If he can't even get through a half-an-hour interview without looking like a moderate, I don't believe he's got the capacity, the backbone, or the minerals to stand up against the French. I don't believe he's got the
Prime
minerals.
Minister, he's not going to declare war on our closest neighbour, personally. So if Farage is going to pledge not to do that,
it would not be a war.
Stop the boat. I disagree. I think that we will find a way to stop the boats using probably the services of the Royal Navy in pursuit of this goal. I think that it will not cause a war. And eventually,
it won't.
I agree. It won't.
It won't cause.
That's just scaremongering. That's again. If there's a will, there's a way. I really, truly believe that. If people want to to start deporting migrants, they'll find a way to do it.
Will. There was no will in the previous government either. No.
Which is why I'm holding reform to account, because, like I say,
you should hold them to account when they're in, because otherwise we're stuck with Labour and Conservative, which you know is worse.
Why would I throw all of my time, all of my resources behind a party which I think is nothing more than Tory 2.0? I mean, if they got any more to the left, they'd be having a red rosette ribbon on them. Okay, that's number one. Why would I spend my time 3 years out of an election getting behind somebody like Reform when I could be getting behind another party who will actually hold Reform to account?
Look.
I'm going to have to go with a new question. I've got 2 more questions and I'm aware of time. So I'm going to give this one to Jonathan. Riddle me this, Jonathan. How can an economy grow if tax contributors are leaving and people who are not contributing so much tax are coming into the country and relying heavily on our welfare state? Riddle me this. How can an economy grow with that?
Well, that last point, I mean, it's a complete myth that people can just come off the plane or a boat or whatever and just start claiming benefits. That's not how it works. You have to and people, there's a huge NHS surcharge, by the way, even for legal migrants.
That costs.
For legal migrants.
But they might not be getting money, but they're getting access to healthcare. They're getting access to services which you and everybody here has paid into. They get access to it. So it is costing the economy. I didn't say they're having benefits. There's a big difference.
We can have a conversation about the economy and taxation, but it is not the same conversation as migration.
How can
migration
the
is not
taxpayers are leaving?
Migration is not the key reason that the economy is failing to grow. It's simply not the case. Now, there are lots of reasons why the economy is faltering. We have a huge productivity crisis in this country. That's a long time coming. We've failed to invest in the workforce enough. We're not training people to do jobs, and also we have a low wage economy. It's something that we haven't quite.
Why?
We haven't quite. So it's not for the reasons that you're saying. It's really not. The United States has an awful lot of migration as well, and the wages in the United States are 2 to 3 times what they are in this country. We kind of have failed to catch up with the times. We're still living in the 90s when Britain was incredibly prosperous under a Labour government.
You mean when we had less immigration?
Under the 90s we had
from 1997 onwards, say to the mid 2000s, when we had this idea of prosperity in Britain, and British wages were roughly tallying with key competitor countries, and now those competitor countries are streets ahead. You're going to have Poland that overtakes us in GDP in a couple of years. And
I wonder why.
So look, but do you know why
Poland's doing so well now? Do you know why?
Well, they've obviously had huge investment.
They've stopped immigration.
That's not the reason. Poland was never a big fan. Poland has never been a big fan of migration. Poland accepted a lot of Ukrainian refugees, far more than we did.
Yeah, but they're there temporary. You do know that they're there temporary. Ukrainians.
Some of them will.
When we
have
people coming here, they stay. We don't have temporary visas. That's something which I don't know why is out of fashion now. I say bring back temporary work visas. I'm all for that.
My feeling is that much more emphasis needs to be placed on the horrendous levels of taxation in this country. It's disincentivizing people to work. Yeah. It's at the lower end of wages. It's also meaning people see it being better off being on benefits. That cannot be good news for the country in any way, shape or form. And we just have levels of tax that are too high across the board. Income tax, capital gains tax, employment taxes is just horrendous. And that cannot be good for growth. And I find it very difficult to see how a country's economy can grow when taxes are so high and going up. Rachel Reeves's next budget is going to send taxes yet higher. We're talking of business rates going through the roof.
Well, how do you fund all of Britain's spending commitments then? Unless you just cut them all. Do you just cut them all? You want to increase defence spending?
We are spending £8 million.
You support triple lock, don't you? Or is this the one wealth thing?
I don't support triple lock, actually. I don't.
Okay, fine. So you're not saying that pensions are the one welfare thing that should be left untouched. Surely you're not saying that.
My personal view is that the NHS needs to be looked at much more critically than it is at the moment. I think it's being run in a very wasteful fashion.
Okay, so really what you're saying is that you're just a classic politician because you know that the pensioners are the people who are most likely to vote reform, so their benefits are the ones who are not going to touch. Come on, you've got to be honest.
I want to focus on all areas of spending. There needs to be a proper spending review across the board. Yes, one has to think pensioners who've put into this country all their lives, they pay national insurance contributions.
Boomers are doing so, they've had it so good.
They're in houses and they're going to pass all that housing wealth on to their children as well.
Many of them have got very little money.
It's very disenchanting for younger people right now, but they can't move on the property ladder. But I would say, even though I don't agree with the triple lock, and I know that's quite a lot of people are going to come at me for that one. I don't think that's the priority. The priority is to stop people coming into this country.
Pensions are such a huge proportion
of
Britain's spending.
I agree.
So saying triple lock, leave that to one side. It's a huge part of it. But it's not even saying the pension go up. It's saying that they have to go up by such a huge amount every time.
Those people have contributed, as Gary said. They have contributed.
And young people want to contribute and they're not being able to.
I would say we need to stop people coming in and using our services and not contributing.
Migration is not the answer to every problem.
It's a massive contributing factor.
One more point before I bring you in, Eddie. If immigration is such a good thing, then why is our economy not doing well? If immigration is such a good thing, then why are we all paying more tax?
You can't. It's like asking
Riddle me that.
It's a counterfactual, isn't it? If you took all migrants out of the system, out of the economy, then I guarantee you're doing a lot worse.
Impossible. No.
I mean, we don't have any way to prove it.
We first of all have a lot more houses available and properties for people to move into.
And no one to build them.
You think they're building them?
Of course.
Deliveroo drivers?
The construction industry is hugely dominated by
immigrants. It's making more buildings for more migrants. We have to keep up, don't we? The demand is so high now.
One point I believe in, it's a question of which migrants. I'm a favour of selective immigration, people who can bring something to this country and actually help the economy in terms of their skills. I used to like the idea of the Australian point system.
Oh, I'm against that.
That's what Boris Johnson did.
Yeah.
Have you seen Australia, how much immigration they've got there?
That's because other things have gone wrong.
Do you think immigration needs to be reversed before we start accepting the best and brightest from across the world? Because if you think back to the 90s, when you said it was most prosperous, when the country was most prosperous, when we didn't have the most immigration, do you think that we need a one-in, one-out type of system like reformers said they have? Or do you think we need to...
You deport a random person for every immigrant that comes in?
Well, we've got 1,000 coming. We've got 1,000 coming in every day.
Say one in, one out work. You just choose. You select someone like a lottery.
£8 million a day.
The ones that are not contributing.
Will you deport someone who hasn't paid enough taxes?
In Leicester, where I'm from, we spend over £1 million on NHS translations for people who live here, British citizens, the ones who, like Nigel Farage said, are just as British as us, who, even though they've not lived here, can't speak the language. We spend over £1 million on translations for them. So that means they're entitled to our healthcare system.
Only $1 million?
In Leicester. In Leicester.
Oh, right.
Just in Leicester. So where I'm originally from, £1 million just on that. What you were saying earlier, they are coming in, they are working on the black black economy, because they're coming in doing Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat riders, coming in at a cost of £8 million a day, constantly squandering money, 200 billion, I think it was 300 billion, maybe even more for the Chagos Islands, with frittering money left, right and centre.
We haven't even mentioned the hotels and the accommodations.
£8 million a day. I think it's not only spending a fortune, it's a national security threat as well. Would you agree that they're 99.9% males in these hotels? Or would you say that?
I haven't looked at the figures.
They identify as males, at least.
So there are a lot of men who come on the base, for sure.
Because they're not running away from a war.
There is no such thing as a refugee coming to the United Kingdom from France, okay? Yep. They are economic migrants. There is no war in France. There is no reason whatsoever.
You've got one thing wrong, Eddie. They're not actually benefiting our economy.
Well, of course they're not. Of course they're not. That's why I call them economic migrants, which is why I would rather now be holding reform to account and saying we actually need to get a grasp on this problem before reform get in, whilst we're so far away from the election, because I just cannot see someone who's flip-flopped on so many issues coming in and doing the drastic changes that is needed to turn around this situation.
And I would suggest,
Jonathan, I gave you the original question, remember? How can the economy grow if people who are paying tax are leaving the country and more people are coming in who are not contributing, who are looking...
You're talking about millionaires in the country.
Anecdotally, I've had to go to about 5 going-away parties of people who contributed to this country. And the reason is they said, we can't take the immigration anymore. We can't, the crime also. Okay, you can say that's nothing to do with the immigrants. I won't go down that road right now. But they're saying that they're not getting a benefit that they had before. They just feel like they're being used, and we're letting in more people who are not net contributors. How can the economy grow? I can't work it out.
The vast majority of people who come here want to work and want to contribute. Now, you may dispute that, but that is something that I believe.
They might want to, but they don't.
Well, if you give them, if people are given the chance to work here, and they do.
How much more chance? We give them houses. What we give them accommodation.
And see people, you see all kinds of stories about sort of Syrian refugees, for example, from 10 years ago, who are now sort of doctors and living sort of incredibly fulfilling lives, contributing. They have families who are, they're part of the fabric of this society, just like you saw.
We are at a scale now where if you add a million people to the population, especially on an island as small as the UK, if you had 1 million people every single year where their cultures are completely alien to ours, where they have different ways of life, different ways of thinking, that's not just going to affect the standards of living, that's going to stagnate the wages, it's going to increase the house prices. If you had 1 million people...
These arguments were made in the 1950s and the 1960s as well, and it just wasn't true, because actually...
And we should have listened to them.
Wait. That was controlled immigration. This is uncontrolled.
Can I just say as well, Kezia?
Technically had control over
we've come out of the Second World War, okay? We needed those
Britain had
people
control
to come
over everyone who came in.
And we had
that
people
was when it
who came, we had people who came from the Commonwealth countries. So there was some sort of connection, not from Algeria and places where we've got nothing to do with. Well, we have Syrians. What does England have to do with Syria? Did we bomb Syria?
No.
Well, Syria was what? You're saying that... So
it's not part of the British Empire, was it?
Are you saying that if there is a civil war and the people there just get stuffed? I mean,
they can go to Jordan. I don't care.
Okay, fine. So what if there was...
Go to a surrounding country.
Why should we take the Palestinians when Jordan won't take them? Egypt won't.
If there was a war in Ireland or France and refugees were fleeing there and they were fleeing to the next safe country, which happens to be the UK, you'd be saying, well, why is it our responsibility?
Our cultures are more aligned with them.
Cultures are more aligned. Crisis, everyone has to play their part. It shouldn't just be to the country nearest you.
China can play their part.
China
can play their part. Let China absorb this.
Can I just come in?
Last point. One more question.
One point that Eddie, I agree with what Eddie was saying, but one point he didn't mention is the burden on public services that the higher population is going to create, particularly on the NHS and education, on the schools. It is creating a horrendous burden on public services, and a much greater burden, which this government cannot afford to pay. Even if it wanted to pay, it can't. And that's a very fundamental point.
And last question to Eddie. Do you not feel that if you support anything that's any more right-leaning than reform, that it can cause extremist ideologies to develop on both sides, the Muslims with the ethnic minorities, with white people, and that it's going to cause even more division within society.
Well, I think you actually make a very good point there, but I do disagree with it, because all you've got to do is go outside and look around our towns and cities. Now, we was on the verge of civil war last summer with some of the riots that went on both sides of the political spectrum. So I don't think we could get any more divided, even if we tried. And this is with we've tried the Tory government, we've tried the Labour government, and I don't think.
But Labour did calm down those riots.
Labour fueled the riots.
But they did.
Labour fueled the riots because they didn't tell us who.
Someone more right-leaning than reform would have stoked the fires even more.
But if you get any more left-leaning than reform, what do you have? You have the Labour Party.
No, but isn't reform just the right amount? Just right enough, I should say. Any more right-leaning?
How are they right enough? Because they, on one hand, they say they're going to deport the illegals, and then on one hand, they say, no, it's physically impossible to deport the illegals. If reform had a solid conservative message, and they came in and said, we will do this, we will do this, we will do this, and they wouldn't have fluctuated on that, then sure, I would see that. But with a political party like Reform, who we've seen flip-flopping on so many issues, like Nigel Farage has, backtracking on so many issues that has, constantly trying to appease the centre ground, constantly trying to appease the left, not appealing to his original voter base, core voter base, almost abandoning people who started the reform journey off with him. I think we absolutely need someone who's as just sensible conservatism to rightly hold reform to account. And I don't think I think the question you've got to ask is, if you got any more left leaning than reform, what have you got? You've got the Tory 2.0.
I just said, should you be careful of having anything more right leaning than reform?
No, I don't think we absolutely.
It can cause extremist ideologies and on both sides, and we're very divisive right now.
But you've only got to look at Corbyn's new party. You've only got to look at Corbyn's new party with some of the candidates he's fielding.
Palestine
as well.
first. Sorry, how would you like to respond to what Eddie said? It's the last response.
Well, I think that there is already plenty of extremism in this country as it is, and you have. The Reform Party already feels like it's a coalition. You have the kind of the Tommy Robinson wing of the
and
Reform
a lot of Lib
Party.
Dems in there as well, and a lot of Labour people in there as well.
People who are very sympathetic to that sort of much more muscular brand, shall we say, of hard right politics. And then you have the people in Reform that actually would like to be in government and would like to, and recognise that if you want to be in government, then you actually have to form a coalition. It shouldn't be a purity test. The left has failed time and time again at the purity test.
What do you mean when you say coalition?
Because you have to yes, coalitions within, and also appealing to coalitions in the population as well. Look, the thing about
stop firing their own MPs.
And trying to jail them as well on false accusations. I want to see a real conservative-leaning party led by someone like Rupert Lowe to rightly hold reform to account. And I don't think that's any type of extreme ideology at all. I can sympathise with some of what you're saying. Maybe some far-right types would be interested. And there is extreme far-right parties out there. But I don't think challenging somebody who says, oh, it's physically impossible to deport all of the illegals, I don't think having a solid Conservative party to rightly challenge that, I don't think that's extreme at all. I think it's
Rupert Lowe right-wing for you?
Of course.
Goodness, just because he wants to get rid of mass immigration.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me,
it's pretty right-wing policy. Mass deportation,
for me, it's very much a question of Rupert Lowe's behaviour. You don't go into Parliament when you've got 5 MPs and start calling your leader a messiah or messiah.
Well, he is. He wants to be.
Yes,
I mean, look, Rupert Lowe. I despise everything Rupert Lowe stands for, but he was bang on the money when it came to Farage, because Farage is a wannabe messiah. He's a complete narcissist. He's a megalomaniac. He wants to dominate every single party. He has to be the leader. Anyone wants to share power with him, they get disappeared from the party. That is not the kind of party that's going to get you into government. And if you do ever get into government, you'd last for 5 minutes before the public sees right through you.
Last word of Gary?
If he even makes it to the government, though, we've seen him bottle it at the last minute before. So all I'm saying is the Conservatives have gone nowhere yet.
Talented people in Reform UK.
Unfortunately, they're nowhere to be seen. Where are they?
Richard Tice and
well, there's only 4 of them in Parliament now. 2 of them have the whips suspended.
It doesn't matter how many there are in Parliament.
One, you can't be a government of one person, Gary.
In the last election, only 14% of the vote. Of course, there's so few of them in Parliament. That will change.
Are they going to fill the great offices of state with non-MPs? Oh, you're going to have unelected bureaucrats. The thing that Nigel Farage loves. They're going to be the next cabinet, are they? Fantastic.
Very talented, hard-working people who are going to be standing as candidates for Reform UK the next
No more Remainers, please.
So what we're going to have? We're going to have the Chancellor, the Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary without any parliamentary experience. What could possibly go wrong?
And
what is going wrong at the moment? These people have got experience, and look what that experience has done for them. No, Reform UK don't have experience in ruining a country. But
the Labour government had 4 years, remember, to get their stuff sorted out. They knew full well about the challenges this country was facing. They already had their government formed. They've been an established party for a very long time. There was nothing to stop them coming in and hitting the ground running. Unfortunately, Labour have just hit the ground.
Okay. There's a lot of very high emotions in the room right now. So thank you to my wonderful panel of guests. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next show.